That's so cool. Thank you. Good morning. A Franciscan blessing. May God bless you with discomfort at easy answers, half-truths, superficial relationships, so that you will live deep within your heart. May God bless you with anger at injustice, oppression, and exploitation of people, so that you will work for justice, equality, and peace. May God bless you with tears to shed for those who suffer from pain, rejection, starvation, and war, so that you will reach out your hand to comfort them and change their pain into joy. And may God bless you with the foolishness to think that you can make a difference in the world, so that you will do things which others tell you cannot be done.
Thank you for those words, Reverend Witt. Hi, good morning. I'm Nikki Willard, and I am your worship associate this morning. My pronouns are she, her. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Huntington's dual platform Sunday service. It's good to be together. We are live and in person and in our main hall in Huntington. Whether you are here with us this morning or streaming us live on Zoom or Facebook or watching us later on YouTube, know that you are welcome here. Today is a Sunday Program Committee service. Our interim minister, Reverend Dr. Deborah Hafner, leads 3 Sunday services a month and will be in the pulpit next Sunday. For those of you streaming in this morning, if you are new to our congregation and want to speak with someone to learn more about us, please contact us by email at office@uufh.org. This information will be put in the chat during the service as well. Know that whoever you are, whomever you love, and wherever you are on your life's journey, you are welcome here. Before we begin the service, I have a couple of brief announcements. Everyone is invited to stay after the worship service next Sunday, February 5th, from 11:45 to 12:30 for a very special pledge drive program presented by the board and the stewardship committee. We are in the midst of a very exciting time at UUFH. As we gather together and share refreshments to celebrate our past and support our future, board members will remind us of what we accomplished last year and discuss our goals for the future, including a search for a new settled minister and the joyful celebration of our 75th anniversary. Please plan on staying with us. As many of you know, we now have a community indoor labyrinth walk available on the last Monday of each month, thanks to member Joanne Polischetti. The next one will take place tomorrow evening, January 30th, in the worship hall at 7:30 p.m. Join in to experience the gentle power of meditation. Contact Joanne with any questions. All are welcome. Feel free to bring friends. Let's put actions behind our beliefs. Join the UUSJ, which is the UUs for Social Justice, this coming Thursday, February 2nd at 8 p.m. on Zoom. Our Unitarian Universalist Association President, Reverend Susan Frederick Gray, will share reflections on federal matters as the 118th Congress begins. Please see our weekly e-newsletter, The Flash, or the news and announcements on our website for the link to the UUSJ Zoom meeting, as well as much more information about things going on at the UU Fellowship of Huntington. And I do have one message that came to me this morning. Today, this afternoon at 4 p.m. at the Nassau County Courthouse, which is 262 Old Country Road in Mineola, the New York Civil Liberties Union will be having a vigil and a rally to stand in solidarity with Tyree Nichols' family. After years of repeated and exhausted outrage, we are all profoundly heartbroken and disturbed by the death of Tyree Nichols. Please consider joining, and if you'd like that information again, you can see me after the service. It is my pleasure to introduce Reverend Richard Witt. The Reverend Richard Witt has served as Executive Director of Rural and Migrant Ministry since 1991. Ordained as an Episcopal priest, Richard has served in congregations in New York and Massachusetts and as a chaplain at Vassar College. He has also worked for a number of nonprofit organizations in Massachusetts and New York, including Greater Boston Legal Services, Oficina Hispania, and the Episcopal City Mission. As Executive Director of Rural and Migrant Ministry, Richard directs the efforts of this multi-faith statewide organization. Rural and Migrant Ministry works for the creation of a just rural New York State through nurturing leadership, standing with the disenfranchised, especially farm workers and rural workers, and changing unjust systems and structures. Rural and Migrant Ministries programs include the Youth Empowerment Program, a federation of youth leadership development programs that enable youth to have greater control of their lives as they explore and internalize the concepts of self-worth, leadership, and democracy through efforts to create a just society. And the accompaniment program, which develops and connects allies with efforts for rural justice. Of prime concern for Rural and Migrant Ministry is its effort to accompany farm workers as they organize for justice, equity, and dignity. Richard Witt holds degrees from Boston University and the Episcopal Divinity School, as well as a general course certificate from the London School of Economics. In 2005, Richard was named a Transformational Fellow with Trinity Church, Wall Street in New York City. In 2022, Richard was named by the New York City and the state of New York as one of New York's top 100 faith leaders, as well as one of its top 100 labor leaders. Richard lives in the foothills of the Catskills with his wife, Tracy Leavitt. Two sons, Richard and Tracy are blessed to share life with 2 sons and 3 daughters. Welcome to our congregation this morning, Reverend Witt. Please join me in reading our mission statement. The words are on the screen. In religious community, we nurture our individual spirits through caring for one another and helping to heal the world. I now invite Nina up to light the chalice. The sacred power of justice. We light this flame to ignite the sacred power of justice. We light this flame so that it may be a beacon of hope in moments of uncertainty, fear, anxiety, and the unknown. We light this flame and are emboldened by its blaze, knowing our strength as a prophetic and powerful people is rooted in the diverse ways we answer the call to love. We will now sing the hymn, Building Bridges. Please rise as you are able in body and spirit and join in singing the hymn. Isabella will play it through once, and then we will sing the verse twice.
So if I'm not mistaken, now's the opportunity for those of you that are feeling younger to come on up the steps. Good morning. My name's Richard. I did. Boy, it's cold. No. Okay.
Maybe it's not on.
Okay. I have a story for you. Once upon a time, about 2 weeks ago, there was a boy named Fred. And Fred was sitting on a hill in his backyard when an angel appeared and sat next to him. And the angel said to Fred, "Wow, you seem deep in thought. What are you thinking about?" And Fred said, "Well, I'm trying to figure out the difference between heaven and hell." And the angels went, "Whoa, those are big words." He said, "Well, actually, I'm really trying to figure out the difference between good and bad, but I thought I'd try a fancy word on you." And he just said, "Oh, okay. Well, I can show you the difference. Would you like to see the difference?" And Fred said, "Yeah." And the angel said, "All right, well, we have to travel a bit, so you might want to go ask your mother if we can go." So Fred ran down the hill into his house and said, "Mom, I'm going off with an angel." Mom said, "Where are you going off with this angel?" "She's going to show me the difference between good and bad." Mom thought that was a good idea. Mom said, "Well, I don't know. Is this angel safe?" Fred looked down and said, "Angel, are you safe?" And the angel said, "Yeah, I'm safe." Mom said, "Well, how do you know it's an angel?" "Well, she's got really big wings and her breath smells bad." And Mom said, "Well, okay, I'm not sure we use believe in angels, but we'll go for it." So Fred went out and grabbed a hold of the angel's hand and they started flying, because angels are really good at flying. And they were flying way up high. And Fred looked down and said, "Oh, there's my school. Keep going." And they were flying high. And so eventually they came to a huge building with huge wood oak doors. And they landed right in front of it. And the angel said, "Let's go in." Fred said, "I can't, the doors are closed." And the angel said, "Knock on the door." So Fred went, and the doors opened. And inside was a huge dining room filled with all kinds of people, but they were seated around a table that went from here all the way past that door. I mean, it was huge. And on top of it was every kind of great food you can imagine. What do you think was on top of the table? Mashed potatoes, definitely. Sticky cheese? Stinky cheese. Both were on the table. Any other ideas of what was on the table? Definitely Oreos, both double and single. Not to mention Chips Ahoy and every other kind of cookie you can imagine, even those that have the funny French names that you can't pronounce. Pasta with white sauce or red sauce? That was a trick question. They were both there. Oh, yes, there was fruit because you have to be healthy, and there were vegetables, and there were M&Ms. Those were better. Okay. What else was on top of the table? What's your favorite food? Crackers, definitely crackers. It was all there. And as I said, seated around the table were all these people, except every one of them was crying and moaning. And as Fred looked at the people, he realized they were all really, really skinny. They did not look healthy at all. And then he looked even closer and he realized that attached to everybody's arms were 10-foot long chopsticks. And as hard as they couldn't get the food into their mouths. And they just were wailing. And Fred said, "Oh, this is awful. This is awful. This is terrible. Get me out of here. Get me out of here." Can I have some M&Ms first? No, you have to have a chopstick. So, Fred, get me out of here. So off they flew. And Fred said, "That was terrible." And the angel said, "All right, well, let's keep going. Because that was bad, wasn't it?" He said, "Yes, that was bad." So they kept flying, and eventually they came to another huge building that had huge doors also. And Fred said, "I got this." Bang, bang, bang. And the doors opened, and he looked in, and there was also another huge table filled with all sorts of great food. And Fred said, "Oh, wait a second." Angel said, "Look, keep looking. Stay with it." And Fred looked, and around this table were also lots of people. And he looked, and they were all smiling and laughing, and they were rather roly-poly. And he said, "Wait," because he looked and he saw that each of them also had 10-foot long chopsticks attached to their arms. And he said, "I don't get it. It's the same thing." And the angel said, "Look harder." And he looked, and then eventually a smile came to his face. And he realized the difference. Any ideas what the difference was? They were good, they were friends and what have you, but there was something different. You are on to it. They knew how to use 10-foot long chopsticks because what they were doing was they were using the chopsticks to feed each other. "Could you pass me some M&Ms, please?" Which is not easy with chopsticks. "Could you pass me the mashed potatoes and some fruit because I want to be healthy?" And they would pick up the food and feed each other. And the angel looked at Fred and he said, "Good job, you got it." And he said, "Can I go home so I can tell Mom?" And the angel said, "What are you going to tell Mom?" "That we need 10-foot long chopsticks to feed each other." And the angel said, "Okay, let's go for it." And Fred went back home, and his mom was very pleased that the angel had brought him back. Thank you for listening to my story. Have a great day, and remember, help others, especially your friends.
We will now sing our children to their classes. This is the time in our service for you to share your joys and concerns by silently lighting a candle as Isabella plays quietly for us. You may have your joy or concern shared aloud by writing it on a slip of paper, adding your name, and giving it to the pastoral care associate who will be standing by the candles. Please come to the front of the hall by the center aisle and return to your seats by the sides. Love and prayers for all of us suffering from the killing of Tyree Nichols. A prayer for immigrants by Jessica Vasquez Torres of Interfaith Worker Justice. Source of life, who is known by many names, overturner and illuminator of hearts. We gather with gratitude for the earth and all who journey in it. We give thanks for the interconnectedness of all creation, support for those without support, stronghold of those without protection. We declare openly the times we have fallen short from living out the call to justice our sacred stories place upon us, from recognizing the whole of creation as an extension of our being, from hearing the plight of the creation yearning for justice, from seeing the harm our way of life and our policies inflict upon the creation. Source of wisdom, who is known by many names, the Prophet Muhammad asks, what actions are most excellent? To gladden the heart of a human being, to feed the hungry, to help the afflicted, to lighten the sorrow of the sorrowful, to remove the wrongs of the injured. Let us not forget. The psalmist asks, who is fit to hold power and worthy to act in God's place? Those with a passion for the truth who are horrified by injustice, who act with mercy to the poor and take up the cause of the helpless, who have let go of selfish concerns and see the whole creation as sacred. Let us not forget. Jesus, carpenter of Nazareth, asks, what is the greatest commandment? To love your Creator, to love your neighbor, to undermine oppressive powers with life-giving actions, to be in solidarity with all who suffer, to act for justice, and to teach others to act for justice. Let us not forget. Source of justice, who is known by many names, let us not swerve from the path of righteousness that leads to just and equitable relationship. Open our eyes that we may see the immigrant and undocumented, whose labor enables and sustains our living. The farm worker, the hotel maid, the line cook, the childcare provider, the healthcare worker. Give us the courage to stand with those crossing our borders, escaping economic oppression and political persecution, seeking work to support our families, their families, aspiring to participate in the bounty of the creation. Give us the strength to confront the prejudice and intolerance of those who are fearful and respond by closing our borders to those who sojourn, seeking life and opportunity. Give us the will to leave behind the safety of our sanctuaries and temples and claim our place in the movement to transform the creation, that our voice, our heart, our spirit will join the voice, heart, and spirit of all who demand to live with respect, justice, and peace. Source of direction who is known by many names, in our daily living, let us be guided by the highest estimate of the worth and dignity of every person, regardless of their legal status. And let us not forget that the creation is founded on justice and that we have the moral responsibility to bring forth justice into these times. May it be so. Please join us now in singing Spirit of Life. The words are on the screen. As most of you know by now, our split plate recipient for the month of January is Rural and Migrant Ministry. This means that half of any money you contribute today will be split between the UUFH and the Rural and Migrant Ministry. I think at this point in the service, you've heard a lot about what Rural and Migrant Ministry does and the community it serves. But I'd also just like to take a moment to point out the longstanding relationship this vital organization has had with Unitarian Universalists on Long Island, including our fellowship. Our own UUFH member, Mary Beth Geither, as well as Claire DeRoche from the Shelter Rock UU congregation, have both been honored by Rural and Migrant Ministry for their commitment to social justice for farm workers and immigrants' rights. And Rural and Migrant Ministry has received grants from the Long Island UU Fund for the last 4 years. And members of the Long Island Farm Workers Cooperative have assisted us with unloading our pumpkins here at the fellowship, or down where we have it, for the last 2 years at our fall pumpkin patch. Those of you here with us today can put your contribution into the basket that will be passed around. Or you and those at home can send a check to the office or donate through the website as seen on the screen. Please give as generously as you are able, and thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for supporting us. Thank you for marching with us as we marched from Smithtown to Albany. Thank you for letting me sleep on one of your cots one night. Thank you to the Weavings for letting me shower in their house. Thank you for believing in us. I'm honored to be here today with you, with some of my colleagues. We have Noemi Sanchez and Maria Del Mar in the way back there. Oops. And we have Irma Solis and Jennifer. Oh, Irma's in the waiting room. And Jennifer Brown is our board president. So it's good to be here. Do you see me? The question came from a farm worker, an onion worker up in Orange County. New York is number 4 in onion production in the United States. And he had spent the day with a group of us, a group of faith folk, and we had traveled out to his home. We had gone through the fields. We had done Bible study together. We had shared a meal, and it came to that moment to talk about what could we do to make a difference. And it was in the midst of our Justice for Farm Workers campaign, a campaign that had been going on for 20-some years to get farm workers equal rights under New York State's labor laws, to get the right to a day of rest, the right to bargain collectively, disability insurance, all those things that farm workers had been excluded from since back in the 1930s when the New Deal was passed and Franklin Roosevelt and Francis Perkins cut a deal with the Southern Dixiecrats to pass all those workplace safety laws, but the Southern Dixiecrats said, you cannot treat those who are Black the same as those who are white, and if you want our votes, you need to exclude farm workers and domestic workers. And so they cut that deal, figuring they'd come back. And 70 years later, they still had not created equality, and New York had created its own laws of exclusion, going back, as I said, 70 years, but in fact, really going back 400-some years in New York State in terms of excluding farm workers from basic human rights. RMM had gathered this delegation of people and workers to honor RMM's mission, as you had mentioned earlier, about working to fight injustice in rural New York. It was a core of our mission, and our vehicle often was inviting those who are different around the table so that we could talk about making a difference. The food system doesn't see some people. We go to Stop and Shop. We gather the fruits and the vegetables. We grab the wine. We don't really know or think about those who have planted and nourished and nurtured and harvested what we need to sustain our lives. The food system doesn't see our brothers and sisters who are in the fields, in the vineyards, in the orchards, in the poultry farms. And when we do see them, we see them as immigrants to expel. We see them as people of color to oppress or ignore. And during the pandemic, this especially came to head when we saw them as essential workers that needed to work while we found ourselves often in the security of our own homes. And the dairy workers of New York State were jammed into housing and jammed into buses and jammed into the dairy barns so that we could survive with no or little thought about their own safety and no or little thought about the fear that they were feeling and that their children were feeling about whether their parents were going to die or not. Do you see me? Do you see me? At that delegation, it was in November, after spending the day with folks and hearing about the exclusions, one of the church folks said, "It's getting to be Thanksgiving. What can we do to help?" And one of the other workers said, "We need you to stand with us as we are trying to change these laws that oppress us." And the woman said, "Okay, I hear that, but it's getting to be Thanksgiving. Could you use turkeys?" And the worker paused and he said, "Yes, we could use turkeys. But what we really need you to do is to use your power with your state senators to help us change those laws that are impacting us, to help people hear our voices. Do you see me? Do you hear me?" How hard it is to hear or see when those who are working to feed us aren't right around us. Can't help to have root myself a bit this morning in your 7 principles. Your first principle, the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Your second principle, justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. As well as your sixth principle, the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. And your seventh principle, respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. So it was a critical question, the essence of what we are all about. Do you see me? Do you see my humanity? Do you feel my worth? Do you understand my connection and my value to you? There is a related question also for Rural Migrant Ministry that adds to the fullness of the principles. Do we see ourselves? Allies, people of faith, people of privilege, do we see ourselves as integral and necessary for the quest of justice? A number of years ago, at our annual Rural Women's Assembly, we have an assembly in which the rural women and their allies gather together from across the state. We just had one last month. 150, 200 plus women gathering together. And we had made an effort that year to invite the allies to it. You know, inviting those who had feeding programs or housing programs that were serving rural women to come to be at that, inviting those who were donors from our congregations to come. And our featured speaker that day was this wonderful woman named Betty. And Betty got up and started talking about the importance of the quest for justice. And she said, for those of you who come from lower incomes, the movement for justice needs you because you know how to make something happen out of nothing. Betty said a lot more than that, but I'll paraphrase this a little bit. And there was a pause, and you could see woman nodding. And then Betty went on to say, and the movement for justice also needs those of us who are from middle income backgrounds, because you know how to live in the midst of the systems that control our lives. And you could see, and I sat in just for this little part, you could see those of us who were feeling like, well, maybe we weren't from lower income, maybe we weren't from middle income, like maybe we should hide here a little bit. And she said, and those of you from higher incomes, we thought, oh, here it comes. She said, the movement for justice needs you also, because you have the expectation that things will work out. Boy, those words have really stuck with me through the years, because I realized as executive director of Rural Migrant Ministry, coming from a privileged background, I expect things to work out. I expect those state senators to pass a law that's right. I expect that we will find money to fund our youth empowerment program. I expect that those things will happen. I've also come to appreciate that having that expectation is a valuable characteristic when you're facing a huge wall, and it's easy for people to feel like there's no way something's going to happen. The power of seeing leads to transformation and is a check against the prevailing narrative of status quo. It is essential to see that farm worker. It is essential to see our brothers and sisters who are working for justice. It is essential to see our own selves as a part of that movement. Rural Migrant Ministry provides a vehicle to see each other. The legislation finally in 2019 was passed, and farm workers were given equal rights under the New York State labor law. But that wasn't the goal. The goal was that farm workers' voices could then be heard at the bargaining table so that they could negotiate for themselves contracts that would improve and enhance their lives, or at the minimum, enhance their ability and their families to survive. And so Rural Migrant Ministry over the past 2 years now has been working with a number of unions and other organizations and witnessed the first farm worker union formed in the history of New York at the Pindar Vineyards out on the North Fork. Except Pindar didn't want to negotiate. Pindar called the workers lazy, untrustworthy. And so Rural Migrant Ministry has been facilitating, and some of you have participated in vigils and reaching out to say to Pindar Wines, negotiate so that we can buy your wines in the confidence of saying that we are supporting a union label, just like Cesar Chavez did all those years ago with Gallo wines. And I know some of us were involved in those grape boycotts. It's sort of funny how history goes on and keeps coming back to grapes. But it's not just about standing for justice, it's about nurturing justice. It's about nurturing alternatives. And so Rural Migrant Ministries helped a group of young people that we first met at our overnight leadership camp that we do every summer up in the Hudson Valley, helping a group of those young people create their own organization called VOLI, Voices of Long Island Youth, and their efforts to create a podcast that gives voice to them and to other young people and farm workers to be heard further. It's about standing with a group of farm workers who said, we know how to grow things. Why can't we create our own cooperative? And so they've created their own cooperative, and Rural Migrant Ministry has been standing with them as they have developed further skills about maneuvering within New York. Like, did you know that you need a license to sell plants? I guess it's sort of obvious, but wasn't obvious to us. Did you know that you even need a license to grow them? So these kinds of things about how do you fit within the system, but how do you fit within the system and be different? Being different in terms of everybody having an equal voice to be heard at the table. And I already mentioned the Rural Women's Assembly and working with a group of women to help them live into their own sense of self-worth in spite of the voices that are coming from society saying, you don't count, you don't belong. Or through our program, Building Bridges, where we bring people from congregations together with the people of RMM to explore over a 6-month period how to work together, how to learn from one another, how to grow together. As you live into your principles, I invite you to continue to join us. We are a people of action, of passion and determination. We are a diverse array of ages, races, and cultures filled with wisdom and humility. We do require patience and persistence and courage, but I can assure you we are filled with breath and we're not boring. And besides the world, we need to help bend the arc toward justice. My colleagues and I thank you for welcoming us into your home, and we look forward to collaborating with you. Amen. Sorry, I forgot to say the announcement. If you would like to learn more about us and connect with us, then correct me, the voice from heaven, Jim. I think we're setting up a table for after. Maybe the voice will appear in the social hall. So we'll have a chance to really sink our teeth into some things. Got it. I love talking to God.
I just want to say something about this next song as we have the video. If everybody would like to join in the chorus, I think you'll know the words.
This land is your land, this land is my land, from California to the New York Island, from the redwood forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. As I was walking that ribbon of highway, I saw above me that endless skyway. I saw below me that golden valley. This land was made for you and me. I've roamed and rambled, and I followed my footsteps to the sparkling sands of her diamond deserts, and all around me a voice was sounding. This land was made for you and me. This land is your land, this land is my land, from California to the New York Island, from the redwood forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. When the sun came shining and was strolling, and the wheat fields waving, and the dust clouds rolling, and the fog was lifting. A voice was chanting, this land was made for you and me. As I went walking, I saw a sign there, and on the sign it said no trespassing. But on the other side, it didn't say nothing. That side was made for you and me. This land is your land, this land is my land. From California to the New York Island, from the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. In the shadow of the steeple, I saw my people. By the relief office, I've seen my people. As they stood there hungry, I stood there asking, is this land made for you and me? Nobody living can ever stop me as I go walking that freedom highway. Nobody living can ever make me turn back. This land was made for you and me. This land is your land, this land is my land. From California to the New York Island, from the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. This land is your land, this land is my land. From California to the New York Island, from the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. This land was made for you and me.
And I am inviting Noemi and Maria Del Mar up to help me extinguish the chalice. Up here. We close with these words by Paul Sprecher. As we extinguish this flame, we remember the courage of those who have struggled for freedom, the persistence of those who've struggled for justice, and the love of those who've built beloved communities to carry on the light of hope. Until we meet again, go in peace. Thank you to all who joined us this morning, both in person and virtually. For those of you who are here, please join us for coffee in the social hall, which is a mask-optional environment. The Long Island coordinators for Rural and Migrant Ministry will be in the social hall to answer any questions you may have. And please greet Reverend Richard at the back of the hall on your way out. It's the gallery door. And then join us, go get some coffee and Look around and then join us again in a little bit in the main hall where a short video of their summer youth program will be shown. Go in peace.